Okay, let's start with a pretty mind-bending question for you. What if this whole reality and everything around us, what we see, touch, what if it isn't real in the way we usually think? Like, what if it's actually some kind of construct?
You're jumping right into the simulation hypothesis, aren't you?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's fascinating how that idea has, moved beyond just sci-fi movies.
Right. It used to be just a cool plot device, but now you have serious thinkers, philosophers, physicists, even computer scientists really grappling with it.
Absolutely.
So, today, that's our deep dive. We're going to unpack the arguments, the insights from the material you sent over on this. The goal is really to help you, our listener, get your head around the core ideas, the big implications, without it feeling, totally overwhelming.
It's a lot to take in, for sure, but definitely worth exploring.
So let's dive in. Where do we even start with something this huge?
Well, a really good starting point is probably the philosophical foundation. You almost have to go back to Nick Bostrom.
The philosopher, right? From 2003.
That's the one. He laid out this argument called the simulation trilemma. And it's pretty compelling logically.
Okay, break that down for us. The trilemma.
Right. So Bostrom says basically one of these three things has to be true. First, almost all civilizations that could potentially reach the tech level to simulate consciousness, they just go extinct first. They don't make it.
Okay, sort of a downer, but possible. What's the second one?
Second, they do reach that super advanced tech level, but for whatever reason, maybe ethics, maybe they just don't care they choose not to run these ancestor simulations or simulations of conscious beings.
So capability without the will or desire.
Exactly. And then option 3, and this is the one that really gets people thinking. They do reach that level and they do run simulations. And if they do run them, they'd likely run countless simulations. So many, in fact, that simulated realities would vastly outnumber the one single base reality.
Meaning statistically,
it becomes almost certain that we are living inside one of those simulations, not in the original base reality.
Wow. And when you think about where we are now, I mean, look at video games, how realistic they're getting. Look at AI, VR.
It makes that third option feel less theoretical, doesn't it?
Yeah, it feels like if we could create entire worlds with conscious beings inside, we probably would. Eventually. It seems like it's not if, it's when for us.
That's the unsettling implication. It frames our own technological drive in a very different light.
Yeah.
And this idea of reality as maybe an interface, it actually finds some weird echoes in quantum physics.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering when we get to the quantum weirdness, you mean things like the double slit experiment? How does that connect?
It connects in a really fundamental way. So you know the basics, right? You fire tiny particles like electrons at a screen with 2 slits.
Right.
If you're not watching which slit they go through, they act like waves. They seem to go through both slits at once and create this interference pattern on the other side. It's like they exist as pure possibility.
Yeah.
But the moment you set up a detector to see which slit the particle actually goes through, bang, it stops acting like a wave. It behaves like a solid little particle, picks one slit, and the wave pattern disappears.
So just looking at it changes the outcome.
It collapses the wave function.
Yeah.
Observation forces it out of possibility into a definite state.
It's like the universe is saying, oh, someone's looking, quick, render that bit properly.
That's the analogy people draw, exactly.
Right.
It's uncannily similar to how video game engines work, right? They don't render the entire world all the time. That would take immense processing power. They only render what the player is currently looking at.
To save resources.
Precisely. So the implication from the quantum world is maybe reality itself works like that. Maybe it doesn't fully render until observed. Observation doesn't just passively view reality. It seems to actively participate in creating it, or at least choosing its path.
Yeah. That shifts things quite a bit. It makes reality feel less solid, more dynamic.
And it doesn't stop there. There's another concept from physics that points in a similar direction: the holographic principle.
Okay, the holographic principle sounds sci-fi.
It does, but it comes from serious theoretical physics, particularly work on black holes. The basic idea is that all the information needed to describe our three-dimensional universe might actually be encoded on a distant two-dimensional surface.
More like a hologram, where a 2D surface stores the info for a 3D image.
Exactly like that. It suggests our perception of three dimensions, of space and depth, might be a kind of projection, an illusion generated from data stored elsewhere.
Wow. And didn't physicist Leonard Susskind talk about black holes storing information on their surface, not their volume?
He did. He compared them to hard drives in that sense. The information paradox about what happens to stuff falling into a black hole led to this idea that the information isn't lost inside, but smeared across the event horizon, the 2D surface.
So if black holes, these incredibly dense objects, work that way,
why wouldn't the rest of the universe? It's a big leap, but it feeds this idea that maybe what we experience as solid reality is fundamentally information. Maybe it's all, code. Beautifully complex code, but code nonetheless.
Okay, so if reality might be code or projection, where does that leave us? Our feeling of being alive, our awareness. This seems like the biggest hurdle, right? Consciousness.
It absolutely is. Consciousness is the elephant in the room for science, and maybe for this hypothesis too. We just don't have a solid explanation for subjective experience.
Yeah.
How does the feeling of being you arise from just neurons firing?
There's no equation for redness or sadness.
Exactly. And no proof. It's only the brain doing it. So here's a twist people propose within the simulation idea. What if consciousness isn't in the simulation? What if the simulation is running inside consciousness?
Whoa. Okay, flip that around.
Yeah, like maybe our awareness, our mind, that's the fundamental thing, the processor, if you like. And this physical reality we perceive, that's the user interface. That's the program being run.
So the experience is primary, and the world is generated for or by that experience.
Something like that. It's a radical shift, but it tackles the consciousness problem in a different way.
Right.
And it makes you ask, okay, if this is a simulation or an interface, what are we doing here?
Right. Are we just like characters in the game, NPCs?
Or are we the players experiencing it from the inside, logged in somehow?
Or maybe both. Like this body, this life, it's our avatar, our character skin.
Yeah, a meat suit, as some people put it.
But the actual player, the consciousness experiencing through this avatar, maybe that's something much bigger, something outside the game's rules, maybe even outside time, like a higher self or a soul.
That resonates with a lot of spiritual ideas, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The idea of Earth or this reality being a kind of school, a learning environment.
A training ground for consciousness. A simulation designed for growth, for learning lessons, maybe testing ourselves.
Expanding, evolving through the intensity of physical experience. It gives the game a purpose beyond just entertainment.
And like any complex system, any big software program, sometimes you might expect to see glitches.
Exactly. People often point to common strange experiences as potential evidence of this. Things that just feel off.
Like deja vu, that weird feeling you've lived this exact moment before.
That's a classic example. Or sudden moments where your perception just shifts and reality feels a bit thin or strange just for a second.
What about the Mandela effect? Those shared memories of things that apparently never were, like people swearing they remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison, or the Berenstain Bears being spelled Berenstein.
Right. Those collective mismemories are fascinating. Are they just quirks of human memory, or are they hints of maybe different timelines or patches in the code, edits being made?
Or even seeing repeating numbers like 11.11 everywhere, or 333. Some people see those as more than coincidence.
Little signs in the code? Nudges from the system, maybe? Or breadcrumbs left by your own higher self?
Yeah, like little reminders popping up on your screen saying, hey, remember, there's more going on here than meets the eye.
It definitely reframes those odd little moments, doesn't it? It makes you pay attention differently.
Okay, so if this is a simulation, and maybe we're players, and there are glitches, the next logical step, the really exciting one, is can we interact with the system? Can we change the code?
Now we're getting to the really profound implication.
Yeah.
If reality is information, and if our consciousness is somehow fundamental or interactive,
Yeah.
then maybe concepts like manifestation aren't so mystical after all.
You mean the idea that our thoughts, beliefs, emotions can actually shape our reality?
Maybe it's not magic, but just a feature of the engine. If the system is responsive, if it's designed for consciousness to experience and maybe even create, then focused thought and feeling could literally be inputs. They could be ways of sort of interacting with the underlying code.
Like rewriting the script of your life in real time.
Or like upgrading your character's software, maybe unlocking new abilities within the game.
And it often seems like the more aware you become, the more conscious you are within this game.
The more agency you seem to have. You shift from just reacting to circumstances to feeling like you can actually influence them, even create them. You move from being a pawn to, well, maybe closer to being a player.
So that brings us to the ultimate question, maybe. If this is some kind of simulation, some grand cosmic game, why? Why play? What's the point of it all?
Well, based on everything we've touched on, maybe the point is to evolve, to learn, to remember who or what we really are beyond the avatar.
To play the game consciously.
Exactly. Maybe the goal isn't about escaping the simulation, because maybe you can't, or maybe it's not even desirable. Maybe the goal is to become lucid within it.
Like lucid dreaming.
Precisely like lucid dreaming. You realize you're dreaming, but you don't necessarily wake up. You stay in the dream, but now, and suddenly the rules feel different. You have influence.
You're not just being swept along by the dream's narrative anymore.
Right. You can start to consciously shape it. You move from just surviving the experience to actively sculpting it.
So maybe the big question we should be asking isn't, is this real?
But perhaps, what is this reality trying to teach me? Or how can I play this game more consciously, more creatively?
And maybe the deepest realization is, you're not just in the simulation.
You are the simulation. Or at least inseparable from it. The player, the program, the experience, it's all interconnected.
The purpose is the playing, the experiencing, the growing.
And every choice, every step, every challenge overcome. It's not just random gameplay. It's part of that evolution. It's growth.
Wow. Okay. So just to leave our listeners with something to chew on, if this whole deep dive, just listening to this, has made you curious, made you question things, made you wonder about the nature of your own reality, then maybe just by asking that question, maybe you've already completed level 1. Maybe that awareness is the first step in playing the game more consciously.